In the serene, snow-covered landscapes of Aspen, Colorado, a sprawling mansion stood as a testament to innovation and wealth. Its sleek, modern design contrasted with the surrounding evergreen forests, yet it exuded a quiet charm that matched its reclusive owner. This was the home of Victor Harrington, a 40-year-old billionaire tech mogul who had single-handedly revolutionized the world of artificial intelligence. Victor was a man of immense success, but his life was anything but simple. Behind the glossy headlines and accolades lay a series of personal tragedies that had driven him into near isolation. Once a dynamic figure in the public eye, Victor had retreated into his private sanctuary, choosing the solitude of his estate over the noise of the world. He now focused solely on his private tech lab, a place where he pushed the boundaries of AI, though few knew what went on behind its closed doors. Despite his immense fortune and cutting-edge projects, Victor's life was far from fulfilling. The laughter of friends and the warmth of family had been replaced by the sterile hum of servers and the glow of screens. Yet this morning was different. As the sun cast a pale light across the fresh snow, Victor prepared to face another day of research and solitude, unaware that his life was about to change forever. As he stepped outside, the crisp air bit at his face and his boots crunched against the snow. His thoughts wandered to the latest AI prototype he'd been developing, a project that could redefine human-machine interaction. But before he could lose himself in work, something caught his eye near the estate's front gates. It was a cardboard box, weathered and unassuming, partially covered in snow. Victor paused, his curiosity piqued. The sight was strange, out of place against the pristine surroundings of his luxurious estate. What could it be? Little did he know, the contents of that box would unravel a story of danger, compassion, and resilience that would test his character in ways he never imagined. Victor Harrington approached the box cautiously, the icy wind cutting through his thick coat. As he knelt down, he noticed how battered and worn it looked. One corner was slightly torn, revealing a glimpse of something inside. His instincts told him this wasn't ordinary. Something about the box felt wrong. With a deep breath, he lifted the lid. Inside were 4 small children, their faces pale and their tiny bodies trembling from the cold. The youngest, barely a year old, was swaddled in a thin blanket that offered little protection against the biting winter. The others, likely between 2 and 5 years old, were huddled together, their wide, frightened eyes staring up at him. Victor's heart clenched. For a man who spent most of his life immersed in technology, logic, and data, the sight of these vulnerable children struck a deeply human chord. "My God," he muttered, his breath visible in the cold air. "What are you doing out here?" The eldest child, a girl with tangled hair and cheeks flushed from the freezing temperature, shrank back when Victor reached out. Her tiny hands gripped the box's edge as if it were her only anchor in the world. Victor softened his voice, trying to ease their fear. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you. Let's get you out of the cold." He removed his scarf and draped it over the smallest child before carefully lifting them one by one. The girl resisted at first but eventually relented, her desperation outweighing her mistrust. Victor carried them into the warmth of his mansion, his thoughts racing. Inside, the grand living room seemed almost too vast and cold, despite the crackling fireplace. Victor quickly fetched blankets from a nearby closet, wrapping each child snugly. Their shivers began to subside, and faint traces of color returned to their cheeks. "Are you hungry?" he asked, his voice soft but steady. The children hesitated, their eyes darting toward the door as if expecting someone to burst in. Victor moved to the kitchen, preparing warm cups of milk and plates of cookies from his pantry. He placed them on the low coffee table, kneeling to their level. "Here, eat something. You're safe now." The eldest girl eyed him cautiously, but eventually reached for a cup. Her siblings followed suit, their small hands clutching the warm mugs as they took tentative sips. As they ate, Victor observed them closely. Their clothes were old and ill-fitting, but it was the strange triangular symbols stitched onto each of their jackets that caught his attention. It was unlike anything he had seen before, an ominous design that sparked a nagging sense of unease. "What's this?" he murmured, brushing his fingers over the emblem on the youngest child's sleeve. The reaction was immediate. The eldest girl froze, her eyes wide with terror. "Don't touch it!" she cried out, her voice trembling. "They'll come." Victor pulled back, startled by her outburst. "Who will come?" he asked gently. But she shook her head, tears streaming down her face. The younger children clung to each other, their fear palpable. Victor didn't press further. Instead, he focused on calming them, though his mind raced with questions. Who were these children? Where had they come from? And more importantly, who were they running from? Victor knew he couldn't handle this alone. He reached for his phone and dialed Sophia Lane, his trusted friend and one of the few people who could help. "Sophia," he said when she answered, "I need you to come over immediately. Something's happened and I think it's serious." Victor paced back and forth in his living room, glancing occasionally at the children huddled together on the plush couch. His call to Sophia Lane had been brief but urgent. She had promised to arrive as soon as possible, but the weight of uncertainty made every passing minute feel like an eternity. The triangular symbols on the children's jackets remained on his mind. They were not mere decorations, they carried an air of foreboding. He retrieved his tablet and began searching for anything that resembled the design. After several minutes of fruitless browsing, Victor grew frustrated. From the corner of his eye, he noticed the eldest girl, Lila, watching him cautiously. Her siblings were dozing off, comforted by the warmth of the room, but she remained alert. "Lila," Victor said softly, kneeling down to her level, "do you know what these symbols mean?" She shook her head vehemently, clutching her younger brother closer. "They said we can't talk about it," she whispered, her voice trembling. "If we do, bad things will happen." Victor felt a pang of anger at the fear etched into her young face. He wanted to press further but chose to tread carefully. "You don't have to say anything now," he reassured her. "But you're safe here. No one can hurt you." Just then, the doorbell rang, breaking the tense silence. Victor glanced at the security monitor near the entrance and saw a familiar face. Sophia Lane stood outside, bundled in a thick coat, her sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. Victor opened the door and Sophia stepped inside, brushing snow off her shoulders. "Victor, what's going on?" "Your call sounded urgent," she said, her tone serious. "It's complicated," Victor replied, leading her to the living room. When Sophia saw the children, her expression softened, but her eyes quickly fell on the symbols. She crouched down, inspecting the designs with a trained eye. "Where did you find them?" Victor explained everything: the box outside his gate, the children's fear, and Lila's cryptic warning about them. Sophia listened intently, her brows furrowing deeper with every detail. "These symbols," she said finally, "I've seen them before, in classified reports. They're linked to a criminal organization specializing in human trafficking, particularly children." Victor's stomach churned. "Human trafficking?" Chris asked. Sophia nodded grimly. "Yes. They target vulnerable children, often those who are abandoned or taken from their families. These symbols are like a brand, a way of marking their victims." Victor glanced back at the children, his resolve hardening. "We have to do something. We can't let them go back to whoever did this." Sophia placed a hand on his shoulder. "I agree, but this is dangerous, Victor. These people are ruthless. If they find out you're protecting the kids, they won't hesitate to retaliate." Before Victor could respond, the eldest girl, Lila, tugged on his sleeve. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "He's coming." Victor froze. "Who's coming, Lila?" But before she could answer, the doorbell rang again. This time, Victor's security system displayed a tall, well-dressed man standing at the gate. His tailored coat and confident posture screamed authority, but his cold gaze unsettled Victor. Sophia glanced at the screen. "Do you know him?" Victor shook his head. "No, but I have a feeling he's not here for pastries." Sophia's expression turned serious. "Stay calm. Let me handle this." Victor opened the door cautiously. The man introduced himself as Damien Wolf, a name that immediately sent a chill down Victor's spine. "Good afternoon," Damien said smoothly, his tone polite but icy. "I was passing by and thought I'd stop to admire your beautiful estate. May I come in?" Victor forced a smile, his mind racing. "I'm sorry, but I'm not entertaining guests today." Damien's eyes flicked past Victor, scanning the interior. "I understand. Perhaps another time." As he turned to leave, Damien's gaze lingered on Victor. "Take care, Mr. Harrington. The world can be a dangerous place." When the door closed, Victor felt the tension in the room rise. Sophia turned to him, her jaw tight. "That wasn't a coincidence. He knows." Victor nodded, his resolve stronger than ever. "Then we'll be ready." Victor stood by the window, his gaze fixed on the retreating figure of Damien Wolf. The man's presence had left a palpable tension in the air, his words echoing ominously in Victor's mind. He didn't doubt for a second that Damien was connected to the symbols and the children. Sophia moved beside him, her voice low. "Damien Wolf isn't just anyone. I've seen his name in files related to international trafficking. If he's here, it means he's aware of the kids, and that's not good news for any of us." Victor clenched his fists. "Then we can't waste time. We need to figure out our next steps before he makes his move." Sophia nodded. "Agreed. But first, let's make sure the children are safe." They both turned to the living room where Lila sat, her arms protectively around her siblings. Despite her young age, she carried an air of responsibility that seemed far beyond her years. Victor crouched down beside her. "Isla, I need you to trust me. We're going to protect you, but you have to tell us if you've seen that man before." Lila's eyes welled with tears as she nodded. "He's one of them. He and the others would come to the big cold place where they kept us. He yelled a lot, said if we didn't listen, we wouldn't get to eat." Victor's jaw tightened as anger surged through him. "Do you remember where that place is?" Lila hesitated, then spoke softly. "It's near water. I heard it, running all the time. And it smelled like wood, like a forest." Sophia exchanged a look with Victor. "That's a lead. I'll cross-reference in this with known locations and see what I can find." Before she could continue, a loud knock on the door made everyone freeze. Victor glanced at the security monitor. Damien was back, and this time he wasn't alone. Two men dressed in black stood behind him, their expressions unreadable, but clearly threatening. Victor felt his pulse quicken. "He's here again. What do we do?" Sophia pulled out her badge and gun, her voice calm but firm. "Let me talk to him. Stay with the kids. If anything feels wrong, lock the door and call for backup." Victor nodded and quickly ushered the children into a hidden room, a secure area designed originally for storing confidential prototypes. "Stay here," he told them, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around him. "Don't come out until I say it's safe." Returning to the front door, Victor watched as Sophia stepped outside, her badge in hand. "Mr. Wolf, can I help you?" she said coolly. Damien's smirk didn't waver. "Ah, Agent Lane. I didn't realize this was your jurisdiction." "It is now," Sophia replied sharply. "What brings you back here?" Damien gestured vaguely at the mansion. "Just admiring the view. Such a magnificent estate Mr. Harrington has. But I must admit, I'm also concerned about certain items that may have found their way here." Sophia's expression hardened. "You're trespassing, Mr. Wolf. I suggest you leave before things escalate." Damien chuckled, his tone condescending. "No need for hostility, Agent. I was merely checking in. You never know what might happen in such a quiet, isolated place." With a final chilling glance, Damien turned and walked away, his men following close behind. Sophia re-entered the house, her face grim. "He's testing us, Victor. He wanted to see how we'd react. This is far from over." Victor exhaled deeply, his frustration evident. "So what now? We wait for him to come back?" Sophia shook her head. "No, we prepare. I'll call for backup and increase patrols around the property. In the meantime, we need to make this house as secure as possible." Victor called Ethan Shaw, his head of security, who arrived within the hour. A former military operative, Ethan wasted no time reinforcing the estate. Surveillance cameras were upgraded, motion sensors installed, and additional guards stationed around the perimeter. As night fell, the children remained hidden in the secure room. Victor and Sophia sat in the dimly lit living room, their tension palpable. "And not letting him take them," Victor said, his voice filled with determination. Sophia nodded. "I know, but you need to be smart about this. Damien isn't just dangerous, he's calculating. One wrong move and he'll use it against us." Victor stared into the crackling fire, his mind racing. Protecting the children was now his top priority, but he knew that with Damien involved, this battle was far from over. The following morning, Victor woke to the sound of snowplows clearing the roads outside his estate. The world outside appeared peaceful, blanketed in fresh snow, but inside the mansion, a storm of unease brewed. Victor joined Sophia and Ethan in the living room, where a large screen displayed feeds from the newly installed surveillance cameras. Ethan, ever meticulous, pointed to key areas on the estate map. "We've covered all major entry points," Ethan said, his tone professional. "But someone as resourceful as Damien will look for vulnerabilities. We need to anticipate every move." Victor nodded, appreciating Ethan's thoroughness. "What about the secure room?" "It's reinforced and equipped with a direct communication line to you," Ethan replied. "If anything happens, the kids will be safe." Victor glanced at the feed showing the children, who were playing quietly in the secure room. Lila, however, sat apart, her gaze distant. He excused himself and headed to the room. Lila looked up as Victor entered, her small hands gripping a blanket tightly. "Are we going to have to run again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor knelt beside her. "Not this time," he said gently. "We're going to protect you, but I need your help, Lila. If you remember anything else about that place, anything at all, it could make a big difference." Lila hesitated, then nodded. "It wasn't just the sound of water," she said. "I remember trucks, big ones. They came at night and left early in the morning." Victor's mind raced. This detail could narrow down the search for the warehouse. He shared it with Sophia, who immediately contacted her team. "That could be a distribution hub," Sophia speculated. "If we cross-reference it with locations near a river, we might find it." As the day progressed, the tension in the mansion grew. The children were restless, their laughter subdued by an undercurrent of fear. Lila remained vigilant, often peeking through the curtains to watch the snow-covered grounds. By late afternoon, Sophia received a call. Her team had identified a potential location, an abandoned warehouse along a river just outside town. The description matched Lila's account perfectly. "I need to move on this now," Sophia told Victor, "but I'll leave officers here to guard the mansion." Victor's jaw tightened. "Are you sure it's safe to leave?" Sophia placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Damien won't make his move while we're watching. His type thrives on secrecy. This is our chance to take him down and save the others." Victor nodded reluctantly. "Do whatever it takes." Before leaving, Sophia turned to Ethan. "Keep the kids hidden and the perimeter secure. If anything happens, call me immediately." Ethan gave a curt nod. "Understood." As the sun set, Victor tried to keep the children distracted. He brought out board games and puzzles, hoping to lift their spirits. For a moment, the mansion felt like a refuge, its heavy walls offering protection from the dangers outside. But as night fell, the unease returned. The thought of Damien lurking nearby, waiting for the right moment to strike, weighed heavily on Victor. He stood by the window, watching the snow-covered grounds under the faint glow of the moonlight. Suddenly, movement caught his eye. A black car parked at the edge of the estate. Victor called Ethan, who quickly joined him at the window. "That wasn't there an hour ago," Ethan said grimly. Victor's heart pounded. "Do you think it's him?" Ethan nodded. "It's possible, but he won't act tonight, not with the police involved." This is intimidation." Victor clenched his fists, frustration building. "I won't let him scare us." Ethan placed a hand on Victor's shoulder. "Stay focused. Sophia's team is out there now and they'll handle him. Our job is to keep the kids safe." Victor sighed, his resolve hardening. He looked toward the secure room where the children were settling in for the night. Whatever happened, he would do everything in his power to protect them. The moon hung high in the night sky as Sophia Lane's convoy of black SUVs approached the warehouse. The building loomed large and menacing against the icy river, its shadow stretching across the snow-covered ground. From the outside, it appeared abandoned, but the faint glow of light seeping through cracks in the walls suggested otherwise. Sophia grabbed her radio, her voice steady despite the tension. "Team 1, cover the main entrance. Team 2, secure the back. No one gets out." Her team moved swiftly, their breaths visible in the frigid air as they surrounded the structure. Guns drawn, flashlights cutting through the darkness, they moved into position. Inside the warehouse, Damian Wolf paced impatiently, barking orders to his men. The air smelled of damp wood and gasoline, a harsh contrast to the faint cries of children huddled in a corner. The traffickers had been preparing to leave, their plans hastened by the growing heat of law enforcement on their trail. Suddenly, the doors burst open, and the shouts of federal agents filled the space. "Federal agents, hands up!" Chaos erupted. Damian's men scrambled to resist, but the agents moved with precision. A few quick scuffles ended with handcuffs snapping shut, the criminals subdued. Damian, realizing he was cornered, attempted to flee through a side exit, but Sophia was already there, her gun aimed steadily at him. "Damian Wolf," she said coldly, "you're under arrest for human trafficking. Surrender now." Damian smirked, his arrogance unshaken. "You think you've won, Agent Lane?" "Drop your weapon," Sophia ordered, her voice unwavering. For a moment it seemed he might resist, but the sound of approaching footsteps from her team made him pause. With a sneer, Damian dropped his weapon and raised his hands. "Fine, but this isn't over." Sophia's agents secured Damian and began sweeping the warehouse. One of them called out, "We found them." Sophia rushed toward the source of the voice. In a dimly lit corner, over a dozen children were huddled together, their faces pale with fear. Sophia knelt down, her tone gentle. "It's okay. You're safe now. We're here to help." The children were carefully escorted out of the warehouse, where waiting ambulances and medical teams provided blankets and checked for injuries. Among them, Sophia noticed a girl clutching a stuffed bear, her tear-streaked face a mix of relief and disbelief. Back at Victor's mansion, the atmosphere was tense. He and Ethan had been monitoring the security feeds, the black car still parked ominously near the estate. Inside the secure room, the children were restless, their unease mirrored by Lila's silent, watchful gaze. Suddenly, Victor's phone buzzed. He answered immediately. "Sophia?" "It's over," Sophia said, her voice firm but tinged with exhaustion. "We've got Damian and his men. The kids are safe." Victor exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. "Thank you, Sophia. Thank you for everything." Sophia's tone softened. "Victor, we couldn't have done this without you. Lila's information was the key." Victor glanced toward the secure room. "What happens now?" "We'll take Damian into custody and dismantle the rest of his operation," Sophia replied. "As for the kids, we'll make sure they're reunited with their families or placed in safe care." When Victor relayed the news to the children, the atmosphere in the secure room shifted. Lila's cautious expression softened as tears welled up in her eyes. "It's really over," she whispered. Victor knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Yes, Lila, it's over. No one will hurt you again." Lila threw her arms around him, her small frame trembling as she sobbed. The other children joined, their collective relief filling the room with a rare warmth. That night, as the mansion settled into an uneasy calm, Victor found himself standing by the window, staring out at the now empty spot where the black car had been. For the first time in days, the weight on his chest began to lift. The next morning, Sunlight filtered through the frosted windows of Victor's mansion. The fresh snow glistened under its golden glow, casting a serene light over the estate. Inside, the atmosphere was markedly lighter. For the first time in days, the children smiled freely, their fear replaced by a cautious but growing sense of safety. Victor prepared breakfast for them, the clinking of plates and the smell of warm pancakes filling the kitchen. Leela sat at the counter, watching him work. "Mr. Victor," she said softly, "what happens to us now?" Victor paused, looking at her earnest eyes. "You'll be taken somewhere safe where people can care for you and help you heal. And if you ever need me, I'll always be here." Lila nodded, her lips quivering. "You won't forget us, will you?" Victor smiled warmly. "Never. You've taught me something I'll never forget. The importance of standing up for what's right, no matter how difficult." Later that day, Sophia arrived with an update. "Damien and his men are being processed," she said. "And the children? They're on their way to reunite with their families or to find new loving homes." Victor felt a pang of sadness as he watched the children prepare to leave. Leela gave him a final hug, holding onto him tightly as tears welled in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. As the door closed behind them, Victor stood in the quiet of his home, reflecting on everything that had happened. His mansion, once a fortress of solitude, had become a sanctuary of hope. Victor stood by the window of his now quiet mansion, watching the snowfall outside. The past few days had changed him in ways he hadn't anticipated. His life of isolation, once defined by wealth and technology, now carried a deeper purpose. The experience reminded him of the power of compassion and action. Protecting Leela and the children had tested every ounce of his resolve. But it also reignited a sense of humanity he thought he had lost. Shortly after the children left, Victor began taking steps to ensure their safety wasn't a fleeting moment. He partnered with Sophia to create a foundation dedicated to protecting vulnerable children and dismantling trafficking networks. The Harrington Foundation became a symbol of hope, offering resources, shelter, and a path to justice for those in need. As Victor looked out at the snow-covered grounds, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew this wasn't just an ending, it was the beginning of something greater. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Feel free to share your thoughts on this story in the comments below. What would you have done in Victor's shoes? We'd love to hear your perspective. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.